Hello wonderful viewer and welcome to What the Math. My name is Anton and today I'm taking a look at an awesome educational game, but actually I'm not just looking at one game, I'm going to be looking at a whole series of games produced by one of my most favorite companies. Now this is actually a perfect opportunity for anyone who wants to learn things or for a teacher that wants to use a video game in class, because today I'm basically going to be showing you one of my favorite series that has taught me quite a lot about history of the world. Now, in this brief overlook of a newly released game called Hearts of Iron 4, I wanted to actually talk about what I think is probably the most important game series in terms of education, and a company that has managed to teach me so much more than any of my teachers ever could. I'm of course referring to Paradox Interactive, an initially really tiny company from Sweden that was kind of unknown at first, but it was a very ambitious company that back in early 2000 released a video game by the name Europa Universalis. A game that at first struggled to attract any attention, but with time gathered a cult following. But what's more important, it has actually become an essential learning tool for me for years to come. Now, I personally always hated history, and it wasn't because it was hard or because I didn't get it. It was because through middle and high school I've had some of the worst imaginable history teachers, who not only didn't care about their students but made our lives miserable and really tough. Now, as you may know, teachers really determine your education. It is not the topic, it is not your grades, it is the inspiration that the teachers provide, and my history teachers didn't really do that for me. When I was about to finish high school, history was one subject I just couldn't stomach at all. The idea itself would make me shiver. But what I loved back then and what I actually still love today are, of course, video games. And lo and behold, I discovered Europa Universalis almost a year after I graduated high school. A game that essentially had you pick a medieval nation prior to colonial period and have you go through hundreds of years of development, exploration, research, political intrigue, and war to turn your nation into a superpower of late 1700s. This game was brilliant. It was brutally hard, and in 2 short weeks it taught me an entire course of medieval history in such a simple and fun fashion. And it did it so well that I had to play it again and again, and I decided to continue playing it for years to come, while continuously doing online research on what exactly each of the countries represented, how it played out historically, and what I could have actually done better myself. Replaying history with a bit of flavor didn't just make it fun, it made it absolutely and totally brilliant. This was the ultimate teacher right here. Then came 2002 and Paradox released Hearts of Iron 1. This time it was all about World War II, and oh my god, my life would never be the same. Within 3 months of playing the game, I started to consider myself a self-proclaimed World War II buff. And honestly, I don't blame my own arrogance, because I actually think I kind of was. The amount of historically accurate data I've learned and various historical events that this game taught me was absolutely overwhelming. Playing through each and every major power from USSR to Japan, and then doing it again just to challenge myself, I became obsessed with absorbing the ideas, the historical knowledge, and have even started to learn a bit of programming so I could actually help create many of the game's modifications that this game became famous for. And I of course was not alone. So once again, where my physical teachers failed, the video game teachers prevailed. But the story of course doesn't end here. After Hearts of Iron, Paradox decided to fill the time gaps with 2 more titles. Victoria, which focused on the so-called Victorian Age, starting with Napoleon and ending in World War I, and Crusader Kings, which took place during the Dark Ages. But to make things even more interesting, Paradox released a way for one to connect those games and to basically export your save files, which was not only absolutely mind-blowing, but was like a dream come true. So essentially, I could now start my historical campaign with Muscovite Rus in 1066, a year of Battle of Hastings in England, and expand my little country Then transfer the save game into Europa Universalis and continue the conquest with Russian Empire, which could then become intensified during the Queen Victoria era in the third game by the name of Victoria, only to be culminated in the fourth game with the ultimate victory of USSR in 1945. The word epic describes this idea very well. This was essentially 4 games connected all together, and you could essentially replay the game historically or change the world completely and see what would happen if things didn't really go as planned. And honestly, this was and still is the most epic game series I've ever had the privilege to play, and it is without a doubt the best historical teaching tool I have ever seen. Now, do I actually recommend you as a player or a history buff or a teacher to go and purchase this new title called Hearts of Iron 4? Well, I'd have to say wait up a little bit. The game is still very new, it is not actually very stable or optimized, and unlike previous titles, doesn't actually have the same support from the player base in terms of modifications or expansions just yet. If this is, however, your first attempt at Paradox series, I would actually highly recommend to look into either Europa Universalis 1 or 2, Crusader Kings 1 or 2, Hearts of Iron 2 or 3, and to then purchase those instead, because not only could you actually find those games ridiculously cheap, as they're kind of actually old right now, but you could also find and install modifications that would expand these games into the modern era, or conversely into the era of Charlemagne or other conquerors from before the Battle of Hastings. And all in all, I personally am definitely going to be enjoying Hearts of Iron 4 for a very long time, and I've played all of the other titles enough to probably write a book about them by now, but for a new player or a student of history or a teacher that is willing to experiment with video games in class, I would highly recommend looking into Paradox Interactive titles from before and possibly buying the previous titles I've just mentioned when they're actually on sale. And I personally actually bought Hearts of Iron 2, Europa Universalis 2 and Crusader Kings 2 for about $2 each for a friend of mine, and you could probably find them even cheaper because this was actually several years ago. Now, in the next video, we're actually going to take a closer look at Hearts of Iron 4, and I will actually give you my personal opinion on whether this game is totally worth buying or not so much. But until then, I just wanted to say that definitely look into the games by this company. It is definitely one of the most educational game series you can find in the world, and I hope that Paradox continues on the same track. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say in this video, and hopefully you've learned something from it. And if you're a teacher or a student or just love history, do take a look at those games and possibly even consider buying this title if you actually want to play something more recent and more modern. And thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate all of your support. Like this video if you've enjoyed it, share it with someone who you think may want to learn something from this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Game you later, and as always, bye bye.